Look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
Episode number 78 of Weather Weekly. Good to be with you here and rolling through the middle of the month of July. Man, we are flying through, no doubt about it. And hopefully you're having a fantastic week so far. Boy, it was nice to have some rain last Friday, almost an inch of rainfall here in Indianapolis. There were several areas that had some good downpours. Unfortunately, we need more. We need a lot more. But it did help, at least a little bit. At least a little bit here, kind of delayed the browning a little bit. We're not fully green here, but it kind of delayed things a little bit. Before we get to the subject matter, we talked briefly about this at the beginning of the month here when we did the July outlook, and I kind of bypassed this. The official write-up on the June climate summary, and we already kind of brought this up, 8th driest June on record, 30th warmest on record. What I thought was interesting, though, and I kind of overlooked this because we kind of just briefly skimmed over it. We didn't break a ton of record high temperatures. But we did break several record low maximum or maximum low temperatures, if you warmest lows. Okay. Specifically in the middle of the month, had a decent heat wave from the 13th to the 17th. Okay. Where we had 4 days in a row of 90-degree temperatures dating back to the 13th. That was a Monday here in Indianapolis. But even that Friday, we were up to 88. So that was 5 days in a row of well above average heat. But in the middle of that, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning specifically, that was rough. Okay. 78, 75, 79. Those were our low temperatures for all three of those mornings, and those all set individual records. Hottest temperatures were recorded in Shelbyville at 98 degrees for a high on the 14th. Farmersburg also tacked on a 98 degree temperature as well on the 14th. Those were the two hottest temperatures that day. So 95 was the hottest in Indy. That was on the 21st. Obviously, we've been a little bit hotter since when we opened up July. We were into the upper 90s. In fact, hitting 99. So. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of briefly bring that up before we kind of get to the meat of our podcast. There are just a couple of notes pertaining to the month of June. Okay, so what we're going to focus in on here coming up after the break is, obviously I want to still kind of piggyback off of the drought situation here. We obviously had some beneficial rain on Friday. Did that help? And there's a lot of comparison now kind of going on to 2012, which was the last time we had a real significant drought. And so I want to kind of compare and contrast where we were then and where we are now. And if we can kind of see any hints on maybe where we are heading based off of what happened during that really, really dry summer. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Ali Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Episode number 78 of Weather Weekly. Good to be with you here. We're just going to kind of roll on. talking about the drought that is building here. And I spend a lot of time kind of looking at the numbers and comparisons and things like that. And obviously, in recent memory, probably the worst drought that we've had in a while was 2012, and I've brought that up on the podcast here a few times. And there's some comparisons to kind of where we stand now, and I think a lot of that is just simply because of how recent that drought was. Right, it was 10 years ago. So it's fresh in people's mind, relatively speaking. I mean, we've had some times where we've been dry or anything like that, but this is kind of the first time that we're starting to see widespread drought starting to build. And we've mentioned it on the podcast numerous times that, once you kind of get yourself into that situation, it's tough to break it. Droughts kind of feed on themselves, right? And so once you're well into a drought, you kind of need a bigger system that would be kind of anomaly to break that up, like a tropical disturbance, whether it be a tropical storm or a hurricane or something like that. So just to kind of put it in perspective, though, I don't think, at least right now, we're anywhere close to 2012. There's a few similarities, but there's a lot of differences. All right. And again, you have to keep in mind that this isn't an official term, but I think it's probably the best way to describe it is that this has been building as more of a flash drought, this 2022 situation that we're in right now, because we were running fine in terms of precipitation coming off the spring, and even into early June, the first half of June, we were okay. We were a little behind schedule, but not bad. And then starting on, I believe, the 13th and then beyond, we hardly had anything. In fact, leading up to last Friday's rain, we had only picked up about 6/100ths of an inch of precip. So that was about a 3.5 week stretch where you basically had a trace. That was it. And outside of northern Indiana, where they just got destroyed by heavy rain, Fort Wayne area early last week had 8 inches of rainfall in about a 36-hour span. Most of the state had not picked up a drop. And so it just goes to show you. And then add to that, you're talking 90 plus heat. It just dried out the ground extremely quickly. And so that's where we're at. The crops have been in fairly good shape up until now. Now we're starting to you're getting some stress on the crops now. And I know the farmers are in pretty desperate need now. And it is something that is worrisome, okay? Just to kind of put it in perspective here, I went back past the last 30 days, okay? So I'm recording this on the 12th. I went back to June 12th through July 12th, the last 30 days. During that time frame, our average temperature has been 77.9. That's 13th warmest for that specific time frame. Okay, this current year. All right, mid-June to mid-July. The warmest is 2012, 81.3 degrees. All right. Precipitation-wise, we've picked up 1.44 inches of rainfall. Again, we picked up nearly an inch of rain this last Friday. So that went a long way to kind of get us away from probably top 10 category, top 5. It's 13th driest in that time frame, 1.44. The driest, 2012. 0.04 inches of rainfall in that time frame. Also in comparison, since March 1st, so that is the beginning of spring records, right now, 14.96 inches of rainfall or precipitation, because some of that was at least a little bit of snow early on for us here. This year, 49th driest. Again, you're in that top tier of dry, but you're not, top 10. To compare, 2012, 10.29 inches of precipitation, so over 4 inch difference there, and that is 6th driest. I think what's more telling here is, and again, this, it doesn't make matters better, but it does put it in perspective on where we stand and just kind of comparing on that drought. 2012, okay? Well, first I should say, we started seeing signs of abnormally dry conditions in June, all right? Early June is when we had that here in central Indiana, all right? Abnormally dry, again, is that it's not officially a drought. It's kind of like think of it like a watch, all right? And then we started seeing moderate drought by July, the July 5th update, where it really expanded. All right. There were parts of the state that had moderate drought a little bit earlier, but it was just a few isolated counties. Now you've got more widespread moderate drought in the northern parts of central Indiana. To compare, we started seeing abnormally dry conditions in 2012 by April 24th. All right. So that was pretty early on. Widespread drought was across the entire state by June 19th. That's basically when we started seeing, you know what? June 19th, we hadn't even seen abnormally dry conditions yet. It wasn't for another couple of updates after that. Extreme drought conditions were then by July 10th. So that was this time of the year already. Parts of the state were in extreme drought, and then exceptional drought. So that's the highest tier, was classified in sections of the state. That never became widespread, but exceptional drought in spotty areas by July 24th. There then finally came some relief by August, where there was some rain for the northern half of the state, so it backed off, but we kind of maintained at least extreme drought. So on a 1 to 4 scale, that was a 3. In comparison, we're at a 2 right now in parts of the state. That kind of maintained through the rest of the summer for the southern half of the state in 2012. So, we were a lot worse off early on in 2012. And so that, you still need the rain, but there's not as much damage done yet, all right? Like, we could turn this around fairly quickly if we can get some decent rainmakers in here. But the problem is, again, that the, droughts feed on themselves. And so, it's very difficult to get some of these robust systems coming in here. Case in point, last week, now Friday was the anomaly here, and we were able to kind of maintain some moisture. But there was a lot of waves that we had this last week here that just could not maintain, partially because it was during the overnight hours, and so you're losing a lot of the energy from the daytime heating. But another part of it was running into a lot of dry air because the ground is very dry, right? So you don't have a lot of moisture here to kind of keep that going. Now, Friday ended up working out because it was so moisture laden, it was able to maintain despite the fact that there's very arid air over our state. So, there's not a lot of signs, unfortunately, that we're going to be able to turn this around. Just looking at the forecast here, the 7-day rainfall total, last I looked, from the Weather Prediction Center. So that's the official forecast that would take us through Tuesday morning on the 19th. So 1 week from me recording this here. I think it was a 0.01 inches of rainfall. That's not going to get it done. That's statewide. There are some chances for rain, I think, coming up this weekend, but it's very hit and miss. And I was on a local radio program it was a week ago, I think, talking about, where we stand with the drought. And now we're at a point where, when you get in the summertime, it's very common to just kind of get these isolated showers and storms that will fire. You don't you don't often get, big robust systems that come in here that bring widespread rain and stuff like that. You get that in the spring, you get that in the fall, kind of more transitional type of storm complexes. This time of year, it's just the heat and the humidity. You get these flare-ups of pop-up storms, which I kind of equate to at this point, that's going to help isolated areas. But think of the movie Independence Day, right? So when you're getting into that kind of close to final scene and you've got the fighter jets that are going up against the big ship that's trying to go over where they at Area 51 or wherever they're camped out at, and they're trying to take down the ship before it gets over them and fires its main weapon, its primary weapon, and the shields are already down. They start firing missiles, right? And it does damage, but it's minimal impact. Think of it kind of like that. All right. I think that's probably the best analogy I can give. Yeah, you're doing some damage a little bit with maybe some of these pop-up storms, but not nearly enough. And so you need something more robust that's just going to completely take the whole ship down. And at this point of the year, one of your best scenarios, and I use best for lack of a better term because you don't want to wish bad weather on people. But we're in the heart of hurricane season. We're keeping an eye to the tropics, and we're getting into the time of year where, especially when you get to July, August, and September, the Gulf really kind of heats up with activity. And that's where we get any remnants of a tropical system come from the Gulf. Okay, they feed up through the Gulf of Mexico and they get worked through the plains, and then eventually they get bent to the east into the Midwest. If we can get a couple more systems like what we had on Friday, where it's numerous storms, that could help to go a long way. It helped a lot. It helped a lot in many locations this past Friday. If we could get a couple more of those, it could go a long way in helping us. But unfortunately, at least over the next week, it's just not in the cards. So assuming that we stay dry for the next week and maybe that trend continues and we don't have any good robust systems that are going to come in the traditional ways, you have to start looking toward the Gulf, because that may be our only opportunity to break up the drought. Last point here. I mentioned that the outlook not looking great here. The 6 to 10 day outlook calls for near normal precipitation. Same thing for the 8 to 14 day. And the monthly precip and even the seasonal precip is calling for equal chances of either going above or below. So there's no strong signal either way. But the drought outlook, it's the drought tendency during a period here that would take you through September 30th, says drought development will continue or persist for our entire state. So there's really no signs of that letting up anytime soon, unfortunately. So we'll keep an eye on that. The other point, I wanted to look at the Palmer Index. And I brought this up, I think, in the first kind of drought monitor that we were talking about here. Let me look at there we go. So the Palmer Index, again, just to kind of refresher, it's based on the current weekly Palmer value, climate, what I'm describing in this map. And if you want to look along, it's at weather.gov/IND, top of the page. There's a special section for the building drought. So over our area, so what the Palmer Index is saying is how much rain or a climate division would need approximately so many inches of precipitation over the next 4 weeks to bring its Palmer Index to near normal, okay? We're at a point now that over the next 4 weeks, we need 6 to 9 inches over the vast majority of the state. The exception to that would be northeastern Indiana, and that's only because you got hammered with rain last week. Again, I mentioned up around Angola, Fort Wayne areas, 6, 7, 8, and 9 inches of rainfall. Southwestern Indiana 3 to 6, southeastern Indiana 3 to 6. You had a couple of thunderstorms as well, but vast majority of the state, including central Indiana, the metro area, 6 to 9 inches of rainfall. So not good. And that is up from the last time we kind of talked about that. So, we're kind of getting in that danger zone now where I'd say if you don't get any significant rain this week and we don't see any significant rain chances down the line, that this is going to be probably a situation where we're going to be seeing exceptional drought or extreme drought starting to build, and then you're starting to get in big trouble with the crops. And then next on line would be exceptional, which would be the level 4. So, there's some concern there for sure today, but we still have a little ways to go before we really need to kind of really worry. What I'm saying is, I bet there is some hope here. Like I said, we're at a point now when not all is lost. If you can get a couple of good systems coming in here, it can help turn things around a little bit, but it needs to happen in a hurry. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen at least this week. So now we have to focus on next week, right? And see if we can get anything mustered up there. And if we can't by then, that's 2 weeks without any significant rain and you're already having moderate drought building. Now you're running into some big problems. All right. So we'll keep you updated. We'll talk about that forecast and see if we can get any rain chances in here. And if we're going to be adding any heat to kind of worsen the conditions as well. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly. Here's a look at the forecast for the week of July 11th. Again, kind of dry weather here. We mentioned this here before the break. Not many rain chances here. At least we're going to be seasonable. We'll be in the mid 80s, I think, the remainder of the week. The exception will be Friday. I think we'll start to warm things up a bit as we start rolling into the end of the week and into this upcoming weekend. Highs will be in the upper 80s both Friday and I think Saturday and Sunday also do open the door to hotter temperatures into the 80s as well. There are some rain chances. They're not great. Again, something else we talked about prior to the break here. Isolated at best, I think, Saturday evening as it stands now. Maybe slightly better isolated to scattered on Sunday, and I think kind of the same thing goes for Monday and Tuesday. But I just think that it's going to be few and far between. I just don't think we're going to be getting a good widespread rain chance here. You look beyond that here, temperatures look to kind of warm up by midweek next week. There are hints that we probably get a few rounds of 90-degree weather starting Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday as well. I think we're into the low 90s to put us through the 22nd. And the outlook here, temperature outlook for the next 8 to 14 days, pretty strong signal for above average temperatures and near normal precipitation, which even near normal precipitation wouldn't be a bad thing at this point. Much better than below average, but it probably wouldn't be enough, even if you're at near normal, to kind of get us back to righting the ship here a little bit. So keep an eye on it. I think we're at the point now that we'd probably need to start focusing in on the tropics. And while you certainly don't want anything make landfall along the Gulf Coast, we're probably at a point now that's what's going to kind of help bust this thing up in terms of the drought conditions that are building, is getting a system that would be tropical and working its way through the lower 48 states and making its way into to central Indiana. So we'll keep an eye on that as we roll over the next week or so. But again, the only thing that's been brewing in the tropics now does not look to play a role into the forecast for us here in central Indiana for at least this week. So we'll keep an eye out and see if anything starts brewing over the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining us here on this week's podcast. Always appreciate your time. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. Shoot me an email, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also reach me on social media at Marcus Bailey on Twitter and Instagram, and Marcus Bailey Weather on Make sure while you're kind of browsing around, check out all the other great podcasts are part of the All Indiana Podcast Network. Have a fantastic week. We'll talk to you soon, and God bless.
Discover more from Stormtrack 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.